It's the battle of the brains. Can universities compete with industrial labs in AI research? So that is the question. Can universities compete with industrial labs in AI research? Now, we're going to do something a little bit different this year. We're going to ask each of you to scan the QR code you may find on a sheet beside you, or it's up here on the screen as well. And we're going to get you to vote off the top of this debate. And hopefully our debaters will change your minds over the next hour. So if you guys can vote now, we'll get kind of a tally of what side the audience is on. Again, the question is, can universities compete with industrial labs in AI research? Right now, we're at a 66% no and 32% yes, but we'll wait for a few more people to vote. I think what I'll do is I'll actually get the first tally after we introduce our incredible panelists today. We have Team Yes on this side. Round of applause for Team Yes.
Ooh.
Oh boy. And Team No is booing already, but a round of applause for Team No as well. Yeah. So while you get your votes in, I am going to introduce each of our panelists, and I'm going to get them to just tell us a little more about what they do, and then we will start the debates. So I'm going to start with Team Yes, with Dr. Hu, is Associate Professor in the Queen's School of Computing. Dr. Hu, let us know a little more about what you do.
Thank you very much, Amber. Thank you so much for inviting me and having this opportunity here. I'm super excited about this. So my research focus is evolutionary computing and a very creative and interesting approach to AI. And recently, I'm extremely interested in explainable AI and how to apply that in biomedicine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Also arguing for Team Yes, we have Dr. Barami, who is research scientist at Google Research. Tell us a little bit more about your role.
Yeah, thank you for having me today, and I'm so excited to be here and to be part of this debate. I'm a research scientist at Google Research in New York, and I'm contributing to building safe and helpful generative AI models and generative AI systems. So in the past, I've worked at Meta and as well as Electronic Arts, where I was getting paid to play games. So yeah, so excited to be arguing yes. And so we are the underdog team, and I'm hoping we will be able to actually pull off a great upset.
Excellent. Okay, so now we're going to do our introductions for Team No. First up, we have Dr. Desjardins, CEO of Distributive, the Kingston-based company developing this Distributive Compute Protocol. A little more about you.
Good luck. Everyone call me Dan. Computational researcher by background. I taught at Royal Military College, so I was on the academic side of things for a little while. Switched to the dark side, and now we're in industry, but we're aiming to unlock compute for everyone at Distributive. And I want to acknowledge the presence of Aaron, who's the lead of our Overwatch team, and our AI ethicists at Distributive. So thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to debate.
All right, last but not least, we have Dr. Etemad, who is Assistant Professor in Electrical and Computer Engineering here at Queen's, and Mitchell Professor in AI for Human Sensing and Understanding. So a little more about your role.
All right, I work on human-centered artificial intelligence. We develop AI models and algorithms to understand humans. Our goal is to understand human behavior, what people are doing, and how they're feeling, and to use that technology for betterment of human-computer interaction and user experience and well-being.
Excellent. Okay, so just a reminder before we get started with our opening remarks, wanted to remind you one more time, we have Team Yes on this side, Team No on the other side. I'm going to do a first tally of the votes. Has everybody had a chance to put in their vote? Quite a few people. All right, so for Team Yes, we have 38%. Don't fret, though. Okay, 38%. And for Team No, we have 61%. All right. No applause here? Or 62%. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so that is our starting point. We'll see how the conversation shifts throughout the debates. I see the numbers shifting already. So let's get started. I'm going to be in charge of timing. Each of the debaters has 5 minutes each for their opening remarks. I will let you know when time is up. And we are going to start with Team Yes. Dr. Hu, I'm hitting the clock. No pressure. You all set?
All right.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Amber. Okay, so for the 62%, here are my arguments. I have 4 points here. The first one is academic freedom. So this really fuels the innovative research, as we know that creativity and productivity don't always go hand in hand. If we want to do creative work, we have to let our mind wander. And academia, universities, they are the best ground to provide this kind of freedom and fundamental research. My second point is on interdisciplinary collaboration. As we know that AI research has been benefiting from interdisciplinary research, including psychology, neuroscience, philosophy. And as we are pushing AI's wider and further applications, we now know that it is a critical point that we need to align AI with human flourishing. So it means that we're going to need more work and interdisciplinary collaborations with experts from psychology, social sciences, and universities are the best ground to provide those rich collaborative opportunities. My third point is education. As we know that we can only do so much on our own, and then the future is actually in our hands. Right? Education is the key. I always believe that education is the best way to change our society and to make the world a better place. And universities provide training opportunities for our next generation AI researchers. This is power. Thinking about that, we have future in our hand, and we can shape the landscape of AI research in the future by designing curriculum and by supervising postgraduate research. Okay, my last argument is the open source. Academic research is largely funded by public sector, so it means that all the results, all the algorithms, they have to be made publicly. And as universities, as we know, whenever we publish our research results, it has to go through rigorous review process. So to make sure that the research itself is good quality and also make sure that everything has to be made public. So academia has this role in making AI more publicly accessible and then more ethical with under ethical guidelines. Okay, so these are my 4 arguments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job. You do have 2 minutes left. Anything to add, or are you good?
I'm good for
You're feeling good. Okay, so let me just restart the clock here. Dr. Barami, over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to provide a complementary view to this. So I think, as Amber mentioned this morning, we are at the verge of an AI revolution through generative AI. And I think everybody in this room probably has interacted with generative AI with like Midjourney or like ChatGPT or Google Spark, which is unfortunately not available in Canada yet. And these are basically the AI and generative AI applications are revolutionizing different industries. So from medicine all the way to real estate nowadays, people are actually using some form of these tools. And also these generative AI models are becoming commodities. So for the first time, I think this year, Google is shipping a generative AI model on its flagship cell phone, on the Pixel 8. And I think in no time, in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of people having access to generative AI at scale. So now, if we take a step back and we want to think about how these generative AI models are developed, so this is basically developed using tons of data, tons of compute, and basically through learning huge models. And so these models cannot even be hosted on one node, so there is a lot of need for infrastructure to be able to actually manage this data, basically send them over these nodes, do computations like what's called gradient computations and aggregate them and so on and so forth. And that is basically the what is currently only doable in industry. And so only a handful of companies have access to kind of this kind of infrastructure. But if you want to think about it a little bit more, even in those companies, there is only a handful of people who are building these kinds of infrastructure. And the vast majority of the people, researchers and scientists and engineers in those companies are also consumers of this technology. And I think I want to liken this to the chip industry. So basically, not every company is building computer chips, but computers are basically available to everyone, and everybody is going to be able to use them to do fundamental research and applied research. And I think that's basically what we are seeing with these kind of generative AI models as well. And the future is in building applications and building basically the next generation of computation through these kinds of models. And that's where we are going to have these variety of open source models. Maybe there will be more black box models that will become available, and then we're going to build ecosystems around these to build these kinds of applications. And that's basically those ecosystems, those applications are not going to need giant amounts of data. They're going to be application specific, much smaller scales of data, much smaller scales of parameters to be tuned, and so on and so forth. And that is going to be something that everybody can do. And I want to add to that we are actually seeing there is trends in terms of scaling of these models. Like back in 2019, when I was working with billion parameter transformer models in NLP, those were considered giant and huge. But today, I think everybody can actually take a billion parameter NLP model and host it on GPUs and be able to infer from those. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see another hardware, basically AI chip revolution. And with the AI chip revolution, we're going to see the AI processing become 10 to 100x even more efficient than it is today. So I'm expecting that basically these kinds of models become commodity and become available to everyone. Of course, I think industry has to also support academia. I think, for example, Google is providing grants for computation to academics. I think we need to do more of that, and I think we need to also make sure that these kinds of access grants are more streamlined through other funding agencies as well. But I think I'm, like Amber, very optimistic about the future and what's going to come, and I think this is going to be a very exciting revolution.
Well done. 20 seconds to spare, so nicely timed. Great job, round of applause. Okay, so now we're getting over to our no team. Dr. Desjardins, you are up next, and I'm just gonna start the clock here. 5 full minutes if you need it.
Thank you. I'd like to get to know the audience a bit first so I can tailor the attack. Raise your hand if you're industry. Raise your hand if you're a student. Raise your hand if you're faculty. Okay. You kind of set me up for like a perfect delivery, you know that?
Okay.
Okay. Infrastructure is at the base of everything that allows you to do any research whatsoever. If there's no lab, if there's no beakers, you can't mix the chemicals and you can't do stuff. If you don't have compute, if you don't have data, your models are useless. Canada is dead last in the G8 in terms of national research computing infrastructure. We're maintaining about 265,000 CPUs at the Digital Research Alliance of Canada level, at about 2,600 GPUs. That's nothing, okay? OpenAI is spending $700,000 a day to run ChatGPT, right? And these types of models are only trained on supercomputers. Next question, raise your hand if you've used 10,000 cores before for your compute and your modeling. That's what I thought.
Can't answer that.
Right? No, you can. You definitely have. But it's just not done. You don't have access to those resources. Okay. And I say this as a former researcher, as a computational physicist. I lived and breathed compute to make my innovations come true. So if you don't have the infrastructure, you're not going to get anything done. AWS charges $421,000 a year to get access to about 1,000 cores, not 10,000, 1,000. Does anyone have $250,000 to spend on trial and error stuff? No. So we have a problem in Canada with the amount of infrastructure we're making available to researchers. Okay, and I experienced that firsthand. It's months of a wait time to actually even get access to half of the compute you might have asked for in the first place. Industry has the sense of urgency, and they're making money and revenue, so they live and breathe and survive based on their ability to satisfy a need, and they get that tight feedback loop. And finally, I know as a faculty or former faculty member that my job wasn't to do research. I was on 5 different committees, setting up symposia. I was reading my master's students' theses and making corrections. I was applying for grants, and I was herding the cats. That level of focus on the actual deployment, commercialization, and feedback loop of like timely technological advancements just wasn't as possible. Compare that now. Our team are hardcore, dedicated, ex-Microsoft research, experienced developers and AI practitioners, and every day we're hitting the pavement and collaborating and building tomorrow's technology. I don't know how academia can match that.
You're good? All right, you have 2 minutes left, but it seems like you're finished. Yeah.
Done.
That was a confident finish. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to reset the clock here. Your teammate, Dr. Etemad, is all set, so 5 minutes on the clock.
All right, I'm going to start my own timer just to make sure I'm on time.
Doesn't trust the moderator.
I just don't see your timer. So I'm going to argue my position from a few different angles. One angle is, what are the ingredients we need to push AI research forward? I think there are 2 key ingredients for that. One is talent. The other is resources. When it comes to talent, let's just look at the sheer number of people who focus on AI research day in, day out in top companies that work on AI. We have companies with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees just doing AI research, right? Whereas in academia, let's look at the top 500 universities in the world. We have maybe 5, 6 departments that are engaged in AI, 5, 10 faculty per department, maybe 10 students per faculty. We're looking at most 500, 600 people per university, where that number really pales in comparison to what we have in industry. Also, we see evidence of mass migration from academia to industry, and that's a good example of how academia cannot retain talent, and industry can absorb the talent that comes out of universities for a number of reasons. One is the focus on AI research, the other is resources, the other is just compensation. The other ingredient is resources. As Dan argued here, really what we need for one of the key ingredients to achieve AGI, we can argue are these large foundational models with billions of parameters or hundreds of billions of parameters. The estimate is that it took $5 million to train ChatGPT, and that's the final train. They probably trained it 10, 15, 20 times until they got it right. That sort of resource is just not available. We can't afford to spend $100 million just to train a model, and maybe we would get it right, maybe we wouldn't. That's just not available to us. So from a resource perspective, and like you said again, to keep that model up and running, you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, and which again is not available to academia. So from an ingredient perspective, academia just doesn't have what industry has to push AI research forward with that pace. The other angle that I want to argue for my position is, what do we need to be true for my position to be true? Yes, we can argue that there are problems in academia that industry is there are problems that academia is better at than industry. We can talk about, there are fundamental and theoretical research that does not require GPUs. We can argue about all of that, and all of those could be true, but it doesn't prove that academia can keep up. What needs to be true for my position to be true is that there are a key subset of problems that are needed for AGI that academia cannot do, but industry can. If that statement is true, then my position is correct, right? It doesn't matter that there are some problems that academia is better at than industry. That doesn't matter. What matters is that there are a subset of problems that are indeed required for AGI to happen, and those are only achievable by industry and not academia. And I think that the answer to that position is yes, because there are problems. We can see these large foundational models, again, which we talked about, they're just not doable in academia, but they are in industry. So for our position to be correct here, that statement has to hold, and I think it does. The other angle I wanted to tackle this position from is just, let's talk about a few examples in the past few years about some of the key pivotal moments in AI. Let's talk about that a little bit. When we talk about computer vision, what are the key papers that come to mind? ResNet, MaskRCNN, masked autoencoders are scalable vision learners, right? When it comes to NLP, what do we think about? Attention is all you need. BERT, right? GPT-3, 4. Where are these papers coming from? They're all from industry, right? So just looking at some examples out there, MedPalm 2 from Google, like a really good medical AI paper. When we look at these examples, they are evidence that yes, academia is doing great work. We have people who have both camps, and we have people who are in academia and industry. So yes, academia is involved, but the key driving force for all of these big achievements in the past few years has been from industry. And yeah, I'll close off with that.
Nicely done. 5 seconds left. All right, big round of applause to everyone. So what we're going to do now is we have a 15-minute moderated discussion. That means it's a combination of the teams challenging each other, and also the audience gets to ask questions as well. So I'm going to start the clock on that. I wanted to let the teams know what will happen now is that we're going to actually start with Team No. You get 2 questions to challenge Team Yes, give them an opportunity to defend themselves. I'm going to start with Team No because they went second in the opening remarks, and then we will do the same thing with Team Yes. So Team No, you guys can decide amongst yourselves who's going to ask the questions, and you have 2, and Team Yes, get ready.
I want to ask a question that hopefully would create a divide in the other camp. One point that was brought up was that creativity, collaborations, and open source are better done at academia. And I want to ask the other team to discuss among them if that is not necessarily true for industry. For example, do Facebook and Google not open source their models? Do they not have tons of people who collaborate internally and with academia? Do they not have people who are working creatively and have freedom to work on any problems? And since Ahmed is from Google, maybe he can discuss that point on my behalf.
So I think that's a good question, as always. So the thing is that I think I'm in open source camp, actually. I am for open source research, opening up models, publishing, and not just because of the sake of science, actually even as a company at Google scale or at Meta scale, basically opening up the models and basically publishing papers, etc., brings a level of rigor to the research that you wouldn't otherwise have. Otherwise, you would get away with a lot of hacks. But now, when you are putting something in the public eye with the name tag Google attached to it, now there is a certain level of expectation that needs to be met. So I think Google and a lot of other companies have been doing a great job actually opening their models, and so basically putting everything out so that then the community can run. Now, I just want to give one example of Llama. Llama, there was this model that was put out by Facebook, and then in a matter of, I don't know, about less than a month, the level of enthusiasm in across the world was so much that there was so many developments that happened on Llama models that probably wouldn't have happened in about a year if Facebook alone was working on those models. So I think that it's just in benefit of industry as well to open things up.
All right, so Team No, you have one more question. It can be a follow-up, or it could be a question to Dr. Hu. One more question.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Dr. Hu, I was going to use that question. That was excellent about the open source. It was a major strength you noted for academia, but it's not exclusive to academia. In fact, our company does 90% of its work and makes it open source and publishes it. In fact, we even give our software away for free to academic institutions. So I'd like to push back on that advantage that academia has, because industry exercises it too. In fact, the greatest, I think, software like Google, Kubernetes, et cetera, is all open source. Interdisciplinary strength, is that also unique to academia? I'm very proud of our team at Distributive. We're highly interdisciplinary and from all geographies. And if we don't have a particular skill set in-house, we'll match up with academia or third parties and go and get it. So I don't know that interdisciplinariness is exclusive to academia. Coming from academia, in our department, we were actually quite siloed. So as much as, yes, psychology and history is across the hall, I don't know that makes for guarantees collaboration anyway. In fact, everyone's sort of trying to survive in their lanes, so I don't know how so from your perspective, is that actually a strength? And is it exclusive to academia, or does industry have just as much ability to open source and be inclusive and collaborative with different people?
Okay, thank you so much. So the 4 arguments that I made, they are not exclusive to academia, for sure. And when we look at open source, it was never even a problem for academia. We never even talk about, is it going to be open source? Of course. And then for industry, that has been an issue because there are challenges with it, right? That's why we're talking about it. And it actually benefits our own argument as well, because as more companies, they are publishing their algorithms, models, and the parameters, this means that we actually can leverage the resources provided by industry. Now we can do academic work, right? It's actually, because one of the arguments that Ali brought out is one is talents and the other one is resources. So as more models, algorithms, they are published, so it's actually a benefit for academia. So we can now leverage that resources. We don't have to do everything training from scratch anymore, okay? Interdisciplinary collaboration, of course, is not exclusive to universities, but my whole point is universities, they provide a richer ground for interdisciplinary collaboration because we live on the same campus, we bump into each other all the time, and then when we design courses and then we attend activities and events like this, we have opportunities to talk with people from different disciplines, with different backgrounds, and that's how collaborations start. Right? It's never exclusive to academia, but it's definitely one of the hypes. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, we can clap. We can clap. So Team Yes has 2 questions to challenge Team No.
First? You go first. I can go first. So I have 2 points to rebut. Is it okay, or do I need to stick to one?
Oh, well, I think if you put it all in one question, that's still a question.
Okay, so it's a long question. So I think basically both the Team No's arguments basically revolved around 2 things. One was around the availability of compute infrastructure at scale, basically like GPT scale for kind of training models, or like Google scale for training models and so on. And I want to push back on that a little bit, because I think basically these foundation models, not everybody will be training the foundation models. There will be only a handful of companies that will be training those foundation models and will be at the forefront. I think it's very similar to how chip is designed. And not everybody needs to be a chip designer, but everybody can use those computer chips at the end. And I think that's basically what I think everybody else is going to contribute. So, and the continuation of the question or point is that You both mentioned about like the level of focus in industry or like talent that goes to industry and so on and so forth. So Ali mentioned ResNets, mask RNNs, etc. All of those are coming from who came in here, and guess where he's going? MIT, right? So it's not just a one-way street. Like people move across academia and industry, and I think it's a healthy balance for like academics to go to industry, and then for people from industry to go back to academia, and it just builds better and stronger partnerships for industry and academia to go basically continue together.
Go ahead.
Totally agree with that last statement. I think we all agree with that for sure. The cross-pollination is the strength. Now back to angry face. The foundational model training is the research. The applications that follow is not research. It's just lemonade stands that talk back to you, right? Like for anyone who went to Collision this year, it was full of companies that were just doing little API calls under the hood to some chat GPT. And those companies, 90% are probably dead now because they serve no purpose. So the actual nugget of the research is that foundational stuff, and it takes that high high infrastructure spend to be able to do that stuff. Because all the applications that follow, that's just feeding the cloud providers' pocketbooks, right? Everyone's just parking their company software and then reselling it to their third-party customers. That's not research, that's just commercialization.
I love the way that you end your statements. You just look at me, you're like, I'm done. Okay, well, that was a strong return on that. Interesting.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, I think we should let you answer that.
Because I think that's not true. So the thing is that, think about it this way. As an academic, so I'm an information theorist. And if you think about what Shannon did in 1940s, he basically took an extremely complex system and he modeled this extremely complex communication system through extremely simple models that were amenable to analysis. And then he laid down the foundations of communications theory. And I think we can do the same thing. On my day-to-day job, if I'm just running experiments at scale on like these huge models, I'm just burning resources without learning anything. So it's best to actually try to understand the essence of the problems that we want to solve and try to capture toy examples that capture the same essence and then try to tackle them, make progress, and then that is going to inform how we're going to actually build these larger models as well.
All right, I do want to give Dr. Hu a chance if you have a question for the other team, and then we're going to wrap this part up. So everyone in the audience, get your questions ready. I do want to say I feel like the fight is still on between our two panelists here. There will be a chance in closing remarks for you guys to challenge each other.
Is there intentional putting us together?
I feel there might be. There might be. I'm unsure at this point. Dr. Hu, do you have a question for the other team?
Yes, I do. I want to hear your comments on the applied research versus long-term innovation. So as we know that if you look back on the AI development, most of the foundational AI research, they happened in academia, right? And then sometimes what's so interesting about academia is when we do research, we are not thinking about the immediate profit or application. We're just, play with the system, and then it's curiosity driven. We just want to know. We have this quest for knowledge. And then this kind of research might not be fully supported in industry at the moment, because sometimes you just don't really see anything that would give you benefit immediately. It's this long-term innovation and value. Sometimes you have results that don't really make sense, but they are the stepping stone for the next paradigm shift. So I wonder, for our rivals, so what your thoughts are on this kind of fundamental creative research?
So that's a great question. I do think that you're correct in the sense that academia is really good at that, right? It's really good at doing very exploratory, future-facing things that might pan out and might not. First of all, that I don't think that's not necessarily not the case in industry. We have research teams industry whose entire jobs is to do research for the sake of research, right? And I'm not going to name names, but we have people on the panel who are from Google Research. So their entire job is to do research. Some of it is short-term. That's what we see because that's on the news more. But they are doing long-term stuff. It's not that it's only short-term. But again, even if that was not true, that doesn't really matter. For this question, for our position to be correct, we only need a subset of problems that academia cannot keep up with, that are essential towards achieving AGI, that academia cannot keep up with industry. If that statement is true, then the other stuff doesn't matter.
All right. Okay, big round of applause for our moderated discussion. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of our debates because we are going to open it up to questions for the next few minutes. Questions from the audience. It would be great if you directed your question just at one team specifically, and it would be awesome if it was a question, just one question if possible. Right here.
I want to have an angry face to challenge the no team. So seems the no team have an assumption, which I was suspecting. So one thing is like, one assumption is like the future of AGI depend on the scale up the model. But think about true, in university we cannot pay the fee for electricity to train those models, but our human beings only need 2,000 kilometer calorie each day to make decision. Like probably a few cup of coffee and some snacks in this morning. So in the future, maybe if that assumption is not true, so actually because of the advantage mentioned by one of the panelists, maybe university is a good place to make next generation of breakthrough. The next challenge is also related to this. So far, the assumption is like the model is going to be more powerful if we put more parameters over here. Suppose that's not true, which many people believe that probably not true. Then at some point, the model is not going to achieve what we want by just scale up. And then because of if more law is still there, every year the model is going to, the hardware is going to be exponentially cheaper. So that means after 10 years, maybe we can develop a better model in university to counter about that.
All right, you guys want to defend that?
Sure. So who's the one researching? Who are the people? What's the team of people researching those more efficient models? Are they master's students or PhD students, or are they people who've been doing it for 30 years, paid $400,000 a year? So I want to go back to the focus and the resources and the experience. If industry is soaking up all the people who've been doing it for decades, right? Meanwhile, the faculty who are absolute experts but who are sort of tied up doing all their duties as faculty members, it's going to be hard to apply brain power from veterans focused on these problems. The other thing is I'm cynical. When I was doing finite element modeling, if I had a bigger computer, I made smaller triangles, right? So everyone gets that joke, more triangles, so the gas will expand to fill a volume. I think if you have more compute available, you're just going to use it to push the boundaries on what's possible. So I'm not disagreeing. I think you're both completely bang on with the fact that you have a lot of the nuggets of innovation that will come out of industry, but the vehicle to deploy, commercialize, fine-tune, get the feedback from 1 million users is not something a university can do.
All right.
Can I add something?
Yes, please do.
So I agree that resources are not necessarily, like the GPUs in particular, are not going to be the key ingredient forever. That might not be true. But what's the next paradigm? Maybe it's quantum computing. Who do you think is going to win the race for that, right? When papers like ResNet and Attention is All You Need came out, they only trained it on 1 or 2 GPUs, but it still came out of industry. They still didn't come out of academia. So I would like to argue that even if that was the case, we still see evidence that in the past, it was still a lot of big contributions coming from industry that academia could not keep up with. And in the future, the way it looks, whatever the next paradigm is, I have a feeling that industry is still going to be on top of it.
All right. Question right here.
Yes, I have a question for the yes team.
Yep.
So I would love to have the answer from the other side, but that's fine. We know that ethics, it will play a big role now on what we think, the development, all the ethical constraints, the do's and don'ts. This is nice to do, this is not nice to do. How would you see academia navigating the ethical constraints and the ethical statements, the things we shouldn't do? And how would you see academia responding to that limitation of our freedom, if it is a limitation of our freedom at all? And how would you see academia responding to the other side? Okay, what if industry is not following it?
Okay, so ethics. Right, so that's a great question. From the university side, because most of the research projects, they're funded publicly, so we don't really have the pressure to release the results really quickly or have a profit as a goal to push the research forward. So we're more careful about whether or not the research results, they follow ethical guidelines. But when you think about industry, they act really fast to concerns from their consumers. For instance, in explainable AI, it's a really fast moving field. But sometimes people, they got a little bit too much on the fair washing part. So this is what's happening right now. A lot of the companies, they want to deploy the AI systems they development, but their criticisms, they want to make sure that their systems, they are fair, they follow ethical guidelines. So they provide explanations. So it's like they're trying to prove that it's okay to deploy their own systems, but that could be an issue. It could be fair washing their own system, try to prove that it's fair. You have trust in it. But when you think about academics, it's quite a different story. Because when we want to make sure that something is explainable, it follows ethical guideline, we can publish research results, and then that's going to be peer-reviewed, and then that's going to be presented at conferences or published at the journals. So we don't have this rush, like we are not proving that the system is trustworthy. We're just trying to look at the problem from a more neutral perspective. I hope that makes sense to your question. So it's like the perspectives are quite different when we compare industry versus academia.
Great, all right, let's go to the next question. I think there's one back here, yeah.
Hello. Hi. So in terms of academic freedom, we're noting that it seems like this is for the YES team, academics have more freedom to approach the groundwork and take their time with it. But I feel like that as an academic, or I'm a student, our currency is valued on how much we publish. And so we don't really have time to slow down. And so if the industry models are what we need to compete on benchmarks, we have no choice but to use them. And so can you have free inquiry when you have to use something else to build off of?
So I think basically, in industry, we also publish. And so research doesn't stop. So maybe we don't publish just for the sake of publications. And I think it's a healthy process for academics to also not just publish for the sake of publications, but rather to take time to develop something that you think it should be disseminated and published. And I don't think anything is going to happen if basically an academic slows down publications by a factor of 2 and focuses on higher impact projects. So yeah, I think this is basically besides the point of academia versus industry. So as in industry, we do a lot of service as well, like area chairing, reviewing, publishing, going to conferences, and then there is also a lot of overhead as well, and there is also mentorship of more junior people, mentorship of students, etc. So that there is basically all that sort of overhead as well. It's not like, if you look at my calendar, it's 9 to 5, there is a bunch of meetings that I have to go to, get alignment, etc. And a lot of times the actual research happens 7 a.m. or Sundays, so it is the reality, I think, for any kind of researcher. Doesn't matter where they are.
All right, we have time for one more audience question. Is there one more question? In the back, I see someone raised, yeah, yes.
No, it's okay. I don't want to be the last.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you behind the pole.
Hi. I have a question for like the no team. The thing is like what do you mean by AI research? You will just keep talking about, when we are talking about AI research, we mean AGI. That's like very like hot topic right now, but like, is that like the real thing that we need to like move forward in AI research? We still cannot use the models that developed like 10 years ago in academia or industry in real world important applications. So I personally feel like we need more like research in like side of safety or ethics. Like that keynote talk was also kind of about that. Like we still cannot use very simple models in robotics because like we didn't consider some part when we need to like apply things on real world. So I think in that sense, those kind of research may not need like many resources. And also they are more doable in academia because like most of like companies are like profit driven. So like working on ethics or like safety may not be like the case for them, like to start with that like kind of research. That's one of my points. And another point is like you said that like using a foundation model and like use an API or like something like that is not research. I agree, but that's not the only way that academia is using foundation model. There are like many interesting ways that academia is like using those foundation model with their own limited resource right now. And if I want to argue with that, I can tell like actually building a foundation model is most of like an engineering work instead of like doing research, because like it's basically like the transformer architecture still, and like you only like a scaling up thing. So it's more like engineering effort instead of doing research. Thank you.
That's a great question. Our position here is not that academia cannot do AI research. We never claimed that. Right? Academia can do tons of great research in AI. You can open any proceedings from CVPR, EMNLP, NeurIPS. There are tons of fully academic papers that has no industry involvement. That's totally possible. The question that we're arguing is, can academia keep up in the race? So that means that can academia produce the biggest breakthroughs that are going to happen, that are going to be fundamental and pivotal in the race for AI? That's the title of the problem. We're not saying that we shouldn't. I'm an AI researcher in academia. I still do AI research, right? I'm not going to shut my lab because I'm sitting on this panel and arguing the no position. The research goes on, and we're doing really good work that I'm really, really proud of. The question is, when it comes to those really critical and pivotal findings and innovations, can academia do those with the same pace and intensity that industry can? And that's my position, that the answer to that is no.
All right, I said we didn't have time for another question, but because there was interference from this poll, I am going to take the final question over here.
It should be a polarizing question.
Oh, that's good, that's good. Extra points for this team.
I mean, it's not entirely polarizing. It's mainly for the no team. I was just curious, to go a little medieval, what you thought about the moat. And if you're unaware about it, there was a Google researcher that said there is no moat. Just to read a few, we don't have a moat, neither does OpenAI. A lot of looking over our shoulders, who will cross the next milestone. Unfortunate truth, we aren't positioned to win this arm race, and neither is OpenAI. So this was from an anonymous Google employee, essentially saying that due to open source, LLMs can be run on the phone, scalable personal AI, especially with the latest techniques allowing us to layer on extra small data sets on pre-existing large language models and train a new LLM with consumer hardware. The game has kind of changed, and it's only been in like the last half year. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the moat itself and the moat issue, opening it up not just to anybody with a computer, but academics as well, taking these models and doing research over top it.
Gigantic moat. Huge moat. Okay, there's a direct linear correlation between GDP, digital economy, and the compute index of a country. How, in the same way that you could say the richer get richer, well, the computey get computier. And that digital divide between the have and the have-nots is accelerating not just economics, but warfare. I'm sure everyone saw the AI-flown aircraft. I used to be a military pilot, and so this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I can't pull more than 9 Gs without passing out, but an airplane can do whatever it wants when it's controlled by an AI. The ultimate strength of a combatant force with AI will dominate any other country without it. So what are we to make of a lot of the third world countries that don't have supercomputers in every block? And that divide is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. So yes, there's a huge moat. Whoever's saying there's not a moat is delusional.
Another example is just if you've checked out the videos from Tesla's fully self-driving systems, is a really good example of that. It's super impressive.
So your question, so to answer your question, I don't think we answered, I think we just commented on your question. So your question was, is there a moat? Absolutely. And my starting point would be, it's an infrastructure problem, mostly. Access to data, access to compute.
Excellent. All right. Thank you to our audience for all of those questions. We've come into the final part of this debate where we get some closing remarks from each of our panelists. And then after we get those closing remarks, we are going to vote again, and then we're going to compare it to the initial vote. No pressure. So each of our panelists will have 4 minutes for any closing arguments. If there was anything that you didn't get to say in your rebuttals, or maybe you wanted to answer something the audience had, this is your opportunity. So each of the panelists, like I said, will have 4 minutes. Dr. Hu, we will start with you.
All right. Thank you very much. I've been really enjoying this. Some of the comments that I want to make to address the questions from the other team. Talents. So where do you think those students, they came from? We did not grow them out of the field. They graduated from universities. And it is important for us to make sure that we have a good overview of what this landscape of AI research is heading towards, and that's in the hands of academia and university instructors and professors. Resources, and then as we have seen, and then the questions from the audience, it is the trend that the big tech companies, they are opening up their infrastructure, their algorithms, their models. So these actually provide excellent opportunities for university researchers to play with those powerful models that they did not have the resource to train on, but now they can do fundamental research using those resources. So these are the 2 things that I want to address. And is this a moment that I can, is this the final?
Yes, okay. And you have over 3.5 minutes left. Okay, the final. So to just really come out of this, my point is, I think the title we're debating on is, can universities compete with the industry in AI research? But I really want to, when we ask this question, it's more from this scarcity mindset. I really want us to change to abundance mindset. And then can we just change this question to, can universities collaborate with the industry in AI research? Because I think both sides, they complement each other perfectly. And it's not a zero-sum game. We need to work together. And that's how we can really push the next generation AI research and AI development and AI deployment. So for universities, we have the talents, we have the training, we have the education. That's what we can do to shape the next generation researchers and professionals in the field of AI. And for industry, you have the resources, you have the real world problems, you have the drive, and we really should work together. And we have seen a lot of things happening already. So for instance, for education, university, they're sending
graduate students and undergraduate students to do internships at companies, so they can have a jump start at their career. They can know what are the most critical questions, problems in the real world, right? They can really focus on these problems and have their research started early on. And then we have also seen collaborations as well. So we have academic researchers, they visit industry, they collaborate together, they write paper together. And in the industry, they can also influence how the education is gonna be shaped for the next generation. So we can get input from industry, like how can we update our curriculum and then making sure that the computer science, the AI education is up to date. So I think that's what we should really focus on. How can we work together and then really leverage this powerful tool of AI and then just make it to benefit the society to the maximum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Brahmi, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, so I think what needed to be said, Dr. Hu already said it really eloquently. I'm just going to double down on the fact that we should, basically, it's a matter of academia and industry collaborating together, pushing things forward. So in doing so, I think I'm just going to also address a point that came up a couple times around ethics. I think basically, so I'm actually part of the Google Responsible AI research team, and we have a lot of ethicists, and we have academics, former professors on the team, and then there are like people with societal consequences of AI background that are on the team, and there are like a lot of academics that have part-time positions, and we host interns and we host professors, and I think that's basically and the reason we do that is that it's benefiting industry as well. It's like industry cannot do this alone, and industry does need to collaborate with academia through basically all of these close partnerships. Now, this is the time that I would have said that if you want an internship at Google, you should vote yes, but I'm going to leave.
Bribery.
Unethical.
Wow.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right.
I didn't say it.
We haven't seen bribery before in these debates, but there's a first for everything. So Dr. Desjardins, we're going to head over to you. 5 minutes starts now.
I won't take the full 5 minutes. Now the angry debate face comes off. I get to share my true position. I have a deep affection for academia. I still do. I taught until last August. And to your point, like, where do talented people come from? We have at any given moment 4 or 5 interns at Distributive. And almost our entire workforce is made up of Queen's grads. So we solidly believe in the foundation, the research and education they get here. Industry is myopic, right? They're chasing the dollar immediately, right? When you said your comment about we get to sit back, take the time to think strategically, you know, industry has to cater to the right now, the immediate dollar, the VCs, their funding, whatever gets, it's actually a nightmare out there. I say that as a founder. So of course, academia is not going to keep up with the pace of research that industry has, because industry is frantically chasing the immediate things in front of it. And so it's putting out stuff that might not be ethical, might not be great. At least Distributive thinks it's being good with that. And so your comment about the strategic long vision of academia is bang on, and industry being more tactical. So I think this debate was actually ill-posed. The question was terrible. It was a synthetic debate. I had to play the villain, and everyone is going to hate me here. But absolutely, we work together. I think the seeds and the nuggets that are developed responsibly with the far-sightedness of academia then become operationalized in these vehicles that have to act quick and deploy and feedback. So I think it's a perfect symbiosis. I don't think we've nailed the paperwork for that, like FedDev and everything else. It's like, I think it's like mashing things together, and it's not great yet. So I think in the frameworks and policy, I think there has to be some improvements, but absolutely, there wouldn't be one without the other, I think. That's it for me.
Excellent, thank you. All right, 5 minutes.
All right, probably don't need the full 5. Completely agree with everything that everyone here said. I'm a huge fan of academia collaborating with industry. I've actually done that a lot myself. Most of my funding comes from industry, so we have very close collaborations. I've done part-time involvements in industry as an academic, which I'm very proud of. So we're not suggesting here that there's a divide between academia and industry. The lines are very blurry. We have tons of people who have 10%, 20% roles in industry, and we have industry people who have adjunct positions in academia and vice versa. We have interns that go back and forth. 2 of my own students are currently interning actually at Google Research. So this is very, very common. There's no divide here. The key question, though, just to go back to it, is like, if you were to put money on where do you think the next big breakthroughs in AI research are going to come from, most of us would probably bet on industry. This is not to say that academia is not doing great work. A lot of the research that is being done in industry is built on the shoulders of giants in academia. Yes, people like K-Ming, who invented ResNet and astronaut and all that, did move to MIT as a professor recently from Facebook. Pardon?
So MIT is where the next breakthrough is coming.
Maybe. But if you look at the people who went the other way around, and the fact that you mentioned in your own talk that you have tons of former professors in your own team, that says a lot. I'll stop there.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so I just wanted to remind everyone, I think you know the debate question, but a reminder, it is Battle of the Brains. Can universities compete with industrial labs in AI research? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna do another vote. We'll give you 60 seconds to vote. If we can bring that back up on the screen so you can scan the QR code on the paper beside you. And you can either vote for team yes or team no. We'll see if we've moved the needle. It seems like all the panelists want to change the question. We can't do that in this debate, maybe next time. So for now, we are voting based on this particular debate. So we'll see how this goes. A reminder that when we started, we got 38% for yes, and we got 62% for no. We'll give it a few more minutes. We have, I think, even a few more responses this time. We didn't get even this many when we did the last tally. So this is great, more people are voting. Okay, anyone still voting? No? Everybody's good? Okay. All right. The good news is that Team Yes has gained some fans in the audience. So the final tally is 42% for Team Yes. The bad news for Team Yes is that Team No is still leading the way with 57%. Big round of applause to Team No. That was so much fun. I always enjoy moderating these. Any final words from anyone on the panel? Was this terrifying to get a stance that you didn't agree with?
I don't think this is a binary question to answer, to be honest, but I had to argue for the no team. But if you asked me in private, I would say it's not a binary question. You can't say yes or no. It's always going to be a mix of all of the above. So that's my real position now that the debate is over.
Likewise.
Okay, any final comments from anyone else? You guys enjoyed yourselves? Your friends again? This is good news for all of us. Okay, so I know Josh is going to come up. I just wanted to, do you want to come up now? Sure.
Just on behalf of Ingenuity Labs, we have a small token of appreciation. It's a big deal to come up and try to debate a topic, especially if maybe you're not sure which side you fit on. So just a big thank you to our panelists again. Small token of appreciation. I do want to give a shout out to Professor Ting Hu, who actually joined the debate just yesterday, really, because our keynote speaker, who was supposed to be on the debate, couldn't make it. So can we have a really special round of applause for Professor Hu?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you, everyone. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for the opportunity.